The sun had already stolen every drop of moisture from Zara Kennedy's cracked lips when she saw the buzzards circling overhead, patient as death itself. Her wrists burned where the rough hemp rope bit into her flesh, binding her arms behind her back around the gnarled trunk of a Joshua tree. The bandits had left her here 3 days ago, maybe 4. Time had become as fluid as the heat waves shimmering across the endless Arizona desert. They had taken everything. Her father's stagecoach, the payroll he had been transporting to the mining companies in Prescott, and worst of all, they had taken her father's life. She had watched Samuel Kennedy fall with a bullet in his chest, watched the light fade from his eyes as the Murphy gang leader, a cruel man named Rake Murphy, had laughed and decided that killing her outright would be too merciful. "Let the desert have her," Rake had said, his tobacco-stained teeth showing through his yellow grin. "Slow and painful, that's what she deserves for trying to fight back." Zara had indeed fought back. When they had ambushed the stagecoach on the road between Tucson and Prescott, she had grabbed her father's rifle and managed to shoot one of the bandits clean through the shoulder before they had overwhelmed her. That act of defiance had earned her this fate. Now, as May of 1882 blazed mercilessly across the Sonoran Desert, Zara felt her consciousness slipping away like sand through an hourglass. Her dress, once a respectable blue calico, hung in tatters. Her auburn hair, usually pinned properly, fell in a wild tangle across her sunburned shoulders. She was 22 years old, and she was going to die alone in this God-forsaken wasteland. She closed her eyes against the burning sun and thought of her mother, who had died giving birth to her younger brother 10 years ago. The baby had not survived either. Her father had raised her alone, teaching her to raid, to shoot, to handle horses and business ledgers with equal competence. Samuel Kennedy had been a good man, and now he was gone. A sound penetrated through her delirium. Hoofbeats. Zara's eyes fluttered open, but she could not tell if the sound was real or a cruel trick of her dying mind. The hoofbeats grew louder, more insistent. Then a shadow fell across her, blessed relief from the sun's assault. Jesus Christ Almighty. The voice was male, deep, shocked. Zara tried to focus her eyes on the figure above her, but everything swam in and out of clarity. She saw the outline of a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. Then she felt strong hands touching her face, tilting a canteen to her lips. "Easy now, easy," the voice said. "Not too much at once or you will be sick." The water touched her tongue, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever tasted. She tried to gulp it down, but the man pulled the canteen back. "I said easy, just small sips." He gave her another small drink, then set about cutting the ropes that bound her. When her arms came free, they fell uselessly to her sides. She had no strength left. The man caught her before she could collapse completely, lifting her into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. "I have got you," he said softly. "You are safe now." Zara tried to speak, tried to tell him about her father, about the bandits, but only a croak emerged from her ruined throat. Darkness pulled at the edges of her vision. "Stay with me," the man urged, carrying her toward his horse. "What is your name? Can you tell me your name, Zara?" she managed to whisper. "Zara Kennedy." "I am James Walker," he said, "and I am getting you out of this desert, Miss Kennedy." Those were the last words Zara heard before unconsciousness claimed her completely. When awareness returned, it came in fragments. Softness beneath her body, a roof overhead, the smell of mesquite smoke and something cooking. Zara opened her eyes and found herself lying in a bed in a small but clean room. The walls were adobe, painted white, and a single window let in the golden light of evening. Someone had stripped away her ruined dress and clothed her in a soft cotton nightgown. Her skin felt tender, burned but clean. Someone had tended to her wounds. She tried to sit up, but her body protested violently. Every muscle ached, and her head spun with the effort. She fell back against the pillows with a small cry of pain. The door opened immediately, and a woman of perhaps 50 years entered, carrying a bowl that steamed gently. She had kind eyes and gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Awake at last," the woman said, her voice warm with relief. "We were worried about you, child. My name is Martha Walker. You are in my home, safe and sound." "How long?" Zara croaked. "2 days since my son brought you here. You have been drifting in and out, burning up with fever, but it broke this morning, praise the Lord. Here, you need to eat something." Martha sat on the edge of the bed and began spooning broth into Zara's mouth. It was chicken broth, rich and savory, and Zara felt strength flowing back into her body with each swallow. When the bowl was half empty, she held up a trembling hand. "Thank you," she said. "Your son, James, he saved my life." "That he did. Found you tied to a tree out in the desert, half dead." What kind of monsters would do such a thing? The memories rushed back and tears sprang to Zara's eyes. "My father. They killed my father. The Murphy gang. They robbed our stagecoach and shot him. I tried to stop them, and their leader, Rake Murphy, he said the desert could have me." Martha's face hardened. "The Murphy gang has been terrorizing this territory for 2 years now. The law has been trying to catch them, but they are like smoke. Here 1 minute, gone the next. I am so sorry about your father, child." The tears spilled over then, running hot down Zara's cheeks. Martha set the bowl aside and gathered Zara into her arms, holding her while she wept for Samuel Kennedy, for the future they would never share, for the loneliness that now stretched before her like the desert itself. When the storm of grief had passed, Martha helped Zara lie back down. "You rest now," she said. "My son will want to speak with you when you are stronger. He rode into Prescott this morning to speak with the marshal about what happened to you." Zara nodded, exhaustion pulling at her again despite the 2 days of fevered sleep. She closed her eyes and drifted off, this time into a healing slumber. When she woke again, it was dark outside the window. A lamp burned low on a table beside the bed, and in a chair beside that table sat James Walker. Now that she was conscious and coherent, Zara could see him clearly for the first time. He was perhaps 25, with dark brown hair that fell to his collar and strong, angular features tanned by sun and wind. His eyes, she saw, were a striking shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over the desert. He wore simple clothes, denim trousers and a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. A Colt revolver hung from his belt, the worn grip suggesting long familiarity. He sat forward when he saw her eyes open. "Miss Kennedy, how are you feeling?" "Sore," Zara admitted. "But alive, thanks to you. Your mother said you rode into Prescott." "I did. Spoke with Marshal Dawson. He is putting together a posse to go after the Murphy gang. They want you to identify them when you are well enough." "I can identify them now," Zara said, anger strengthening her voice. "Every single one of their faces is burned into my memory. Rake Murphy, his brother Cole Murphy, a man they called Snake, and 3 others. 6 men total, though I shot one of them in the shoulder. They were heading northwest when they left me." James leaned forward, his expression intent. "You shot one of them?" "Yes, hit him in the right shoulder. He was screaming about it when they rode off." Something like admiration flickered across James's face. "The marshal will want to know that. A wounded man needs a doctor, and there are only so many doctors in the territory. If Murphy was stupid enough to seek treatment, we might be able to track them." "I want to help," Zara said. "They murdered my father. They left me to die. I want justice." "You will have it," James said, his voice firm. "But first you need to heal. You were close to death when I found you. Another few hours and it would have been too late. How did you find me? That road between Tucson and Prescott is not heavily traveled. James stood and walked to the window, looking out into the darkness. I have been tracking the Murphy gang for 6 months now. They killed a friend of mine, a fellow rancher named Thomas Green. Shot him during a robbery and left him to bleed out in the street in front of his wife and children. I swore I would bring them to justice, so I have been following their trail, learning their patterns. When I heard about a stagecoach robbery 3 days north of Tucson, I rode out to investigate. I found your father's body first, may he rest in peace. Then I found the tracks, saw where they had dragged you off the road. I followed those tracks to where they left you. You buried my father, Zara asked, her voice breaking. James turned back to face her and his expression was gentle. I did. Gave him as proper a burial as I could manage in the desert, said some words over him. I am sorry I could not do more. Fresh tears coursed down Zara's face. You did more than I could have hoped for. Thank you, Mr. Walker. I owe you my life and my father's dignity. Call me James, please. And you owe me nothing. Any decent person would have done the same. Not any person would have been tracking a gang of murderers alone for 6 months. That takes a special kind of courage, or stubbornness. A ghost of a smile touched James's lips. My mother says I inherited my father's stubborn streak. He passed away 5 years ago. Was a lawman himself, a deputy marshal, died bringing in a gang of cattle rustlers. He always said that justice was worth fighting for, even dying for. He sounds like he was a good man. He was. One of the best. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Martha appeared in the doorway with another bowl of broth and some bread. You need to eat, child, she said to Zara. Build your strength back up. And you, James Walker, you need to eat as well. You have been sitting in that chair for 3 hours. I am fine, Ma. You are as stubborn as your father, and that is the truth. Come on, both of you need supper. James helped Zara sit up, adjusting pillows behind her back, and Martha handed her the bowl of broth and a piece of fresh bread. The simple meal tasted like heaven. James left the room and returned a few minutes later with his own bowl, and the 3 of them ate together, Martha chattering about the ranch and the neighbors, and all the small details of daily life that seemed so precious now that Zara had nearly lost everything. Over the following days, Zara's strength returned slowly but steadily. Martha proved to be a skilled healer, treating Zara's sunburned skin with aloe and keeping her fed with nourishing soups and stews. James was a constant presence, though Zara noticed he seemed almost shy around her when she was awake. He would come to check on her several times a day, asking how she felt if she needed anything, but he never stayed long, as though he was afraid of imposing. On the 4th day after her rescue, Zara felt strong enough to leave the bed. Martha helped her into a borrowed dress, one of Martha's own from younger days, and Zara walked slowly to the window. Outside, she saw a modest ranch house, a barn, several corrals with horses, and the endless expanse of Arizona wilderness stretching to the horizon. The Walker Ranch was isolated but beautiful, surrounded by saguaro cacti and mesquite trees, with mountains rising in the purple distance. James was in one of the corrals, working with a young horse. Zara watched him move, fluid and confident, speaking softly to the animal as he gentled it. There was something captivating about the way he worked, patient and kind, never forcing, always encouraging. The horse responded to him, gradually relaxing under his touch. He has a gift with horses, Martha said, coming to stand beside Zara. Always has, since he was a little boy. His father used to say James could whisper sense into the wildest Mustang. You have both been so kind to me, Zara said. I do not know how I will ever repay you. There is nothing to repay, dear. We help those in need. That is what good people do. Though I will admit it has been nice having another woman in the house. Gets lonely sometimes with just James and me. Do you have other children? Martha's face clouded briefly. I had 2 daughters, James's younger sisters. They both died of influenza when they were just little things, 8 and 6 years old. That was 15 years ago now, but the pain never quite leaves you, does it? Losing a child is the worst thing a parent can endure. I am so sorry, Zara said softly. Thank you, dear. The Lord works in mysterious ways, they say. I have learned to find joy where I can, and James has been a blessing. He is a good son, hardworking and honest. I just wish he would settle down, find himself a nice young woman, start a family of his own. He spends all his time working this ranch or chasing after outlaws. At 25, he should be thinking about his future. Zara felt an unexpected flutter in her chest at Martha's words. She looked back out at James, still working with the horse, and found herself thinking that any woman would be lucky to have such a man. Then she pushed the thought away. Her father had been dead less than a week. It was far too soon to be thinking such things. That evening, Marshal Dawson rode out to the Walker Ranch to speak with Zara. He was a grizzled man in his 50s, with a thick mustache and eyes that had seen too much violence. He took off his hat when he entered the house and spoke to Zara with gruff kindness. Miss Kennedy, I am sorry for your loss. Your father was known as an honest man, and this territory needs more men like him. I need you to tell me everything you remember about the attack. Zara recounted the events in as much detail as she could remember. The ambush in a narrow canyon, the gunfire, her father's death, her own attempt to fight back, the decision to leave her in the desert. She described each of the 6 men, their clothing, their weapons, their horses. She told the marshal about shooting one of them in the shoulder. Dawson took notes in a small book, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he looked up and said, "You have a good eye for detail, Miss Kennedy. That information about the shoulder wound is helpful. We have had reports of a man matching Snake Wilson's description seeking treatment from a doctor in a town called Republic, up in Washington Territory. Long way from here, but that gang moves around. If it is him, we might finally have a lead on where they are hiding." Republic, Washington. James said, "That is a mining town, is it not?" "It is. Gold and silver. Rough place, lots of men with money and loose morals. Perfect place for outlaws to blend in. I am putting together a posse to ride up there and investigate. Could use a good tracker like you, Walker. When do we leave?" 2 days. Need to gather supplies and deputize a few good men. Miss Kennedy, I will need you to stay here where it is safe. If we catch these men, we will bring them back for trial and you will need to testify. "I want to go with you," Zara said. All 3 of them stared at her. The marshal shook his head. "Miss Kennedy, I appreciate your courage, but this is no journey for a woman. We will be riding hard, camping rough, and if we find the Murphy gang, there will be violence. You are safer here." "With all due respect, Marshal, I can ride as well as any man, I can shoot, and I have more reason than anyone to want these men brought to justice. They murdered my father and left me to die. I will not sit here and wait while others seek justice for me." "Zara," Martha said gently, "you are still recovering. The journey to Washington Territory will take weeks. I am strong enough. I feel better every day. Please, Marshal, I need to do this. I need to see this through." Dawson looked at James. "Walker, talk some sense into her." James met Zara's eyes and she saw understanding there, a recognition of her need. If she wants to come, she should come. She is right about having the most reason to be there, and having the victim present might make identifying the gang easier. "You cannot be serious," Dawson said. "I am." "Look at her, Marshal. She is not some delicate flower who will faint at the sight of hardship. She survived 3 days in the desert. She shot one of the Murphy gang while being attacked. If she wants to be part of this, she has earned that right. Zara felt a surge of gratitude toward James. Martha sighed but did not argue further. Dawson rubbed his face with one weathered hand. Against my better judgment, I will allow it. But Miss Kennedy, you follow orders. You stay out of danger when I tell you to, and if things turn violent, you let the deputies handle it. Understood? Understood, Zara said, though she privately thought that if she got a chance to put a bullet in Rake Murphy herself, she would take it. The marshal left, promising to return in 2 days. Martha immediately began fussing about supplies and proper clothing for the journey. She produced a split skirt and a sturdy blouse that had belonged to one of her daughters, clothes suitable for riding. Zara accepted them gratefully, touched by the older woman's generosity. That night, after Martha had gone to bed, Zara found James outside, sitting on the porch and looking up at the stars. She had not been able to sleep, restless with anticipation and lingering grief. She sat down beside him, and for a while they both just looked at the night sky, vast and glittering above the desert. "Thank you for supporting me with the marshal," Zara said finally. "Most men would have sided with him. Most men have not seen what you have survived. You are stronger than they give you credit for." "I am scared," Zara admitted. "Not of the journey or the danger. I am scared that when we find them I will want to kill them myself. I am scared of how much I hate them." James was quiet for a moment. "Hate is natural after what they did. But do not let it consume you. That is what my father used to tell me about outlaws. He said the worst thing they could do was not just take your life or your property, but take your humanity, turn you into something as dark as they are. Justice is important, but vengeance just leaves you hollow." "Your father sounds like he was very wise." "He was. I try to live up to his example, though I am not sure I always succeed. Tracking the Murphy gang these past 6 months, there have been times when I have felt that hate you are talking about. Times when I have wanted to just shoot them on sight rather than bring them in for trial. But then I remember my father's words, and I remember that justice is different from revenge." "I will try to remember that too," Zara said, "though I make no promises." James smiled slightly. "Fair enough." They sat in companionable silence, and Zara found herself acutely aware of James's presence beside her, the solid warmth of him, the quiet strength he radiated. She barely knew this man, and yet she felt safer with him than she had felt since her father's death. It was a strange feeling, unsettling and comforting all at once. "Can I ask you something?" James said. "Of course." "What will you do after this is over? Do you have family somewhere?" Zara shook her head. "No family left. My mother and brother died years ago. My father was all I had. I suppose I will need to find work somewhere, start a new life. I can read and write and do arithmetic. Maybe I could be a school teacher or a store clerk." "You could stay here," James said, then seemed to immediately regret the words. He looked away, clearly embarrassed. "I mean, my mother would love the company, and we could always use help around the ranch, if you wanted. No obligation, of course." Zara felt her heart beat a little faster. "That is very kind of you to offer. I will think about it. First, we need to catch the men who killed my father." "We will," James said with quiet conviction. "I promise you we will." 2 days later, the posse assembled at the Walker Ranch. Marshal Dawson had brought 5 deputies, hard-faced men who looked capable of handling whatever trouble they might encounter. There was Tom Brennan, a former cavalry soldier; Mike Chen, whose family ran a general store in Prescott; Frank Morrison, a gruff older man who had been a lawman for 30 years; Danny Sullivan, young but steady; and Pete Whitmore, a tracker who knew the wilderness as well as anyone. They set out at dawn, riding north through the Arizona desert. Zara rode beside James on a gentle mare that Martha had insisted she take. The horse was steady and sure-footed, perfect for a long journey. Zara wore the split skirt and blouse Martha had given her, and she had tied her auburn hair back in a practical braid. She carried a Winchester rifle across her saddle and a small revolver tucked into her belt. James had insisted she be armed, and he had spent an hour the previous day making sure she knew how to use both weapons properly. The journey was long and grueling. They rode from dawn until dusk each day, stopping only to rest the horses and eat quick meals. They passed through the painted deserts of northern Arizona, crossed into Utah territory, and pushed north into Idaho. The landscape changed gradually, from desert to scrubland to high plains and eventually to the pine forests of the Mountain West. Zara proved herself capable from the start. She never complained about the long hours in the saddle or the cold nights sleeping on the hard ground. She took her turn at watch, helped cook the meals, and kept up with the pace the marshal set. The deputies, initially skeptical about having a woman along, gradually came to respect her. Even Frank Morrison, the most old-fashioned of the group, admitted that she had sand. James rode near Zara throughout the journey, never hovering but always close enough to help if she needed it. They talked during the long days, sharing stories about their lives. Zara learned that James had grown up on the ranch, that he loved the land and the work, that his dream was to expand the ranch and raise the finest horses in the territory. James learned that Zara had been educated by her mother, who had been a schoolteacher in Pennsylvania before moving west, that she loved books and had once dreamed of traveling to see the great cities of the East, that she played the piano though she had not touched one in years. As the days turned into weeks, Zara found herself thinking about James more and more. She noticed the way he smiled when he talked about horses, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. She noticed how gentle his hands were when he checked her horse's hooves each evening, how patient he was teaching Danny Sullivan to read trail signs. She noticed the way her heart lifted when he rode up beside her, the way she felt bereft when he rode ahead to scout with Pete Whitmore. It was too soon, she told herself. Her father had been dead only a few weeks. She should be consumed with grief, not feeling these strange, warm feelings for a man she barely knew. But the heart, Zara was learning, did not follow logic or propriety. The heart wanted what it wanted. One night, about 3 weeks into the journey, a storm rolled in. They had made camp in a pine forest, and the rain came down in sheets, soaking everything. The deputies huddled under a canvas tarp, trying to keep the fire going. Zara sat with them, shivering despite the wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. James appeared through the rain, leading his horse. "Miss Kennedy, come with me," he said. "Where?" "I found a better shelter, an old trapper's cabin about a quarter-mile from here. It is abandoned, but the roof is solid. You will be warmer there." Zara followed James through the dark, rain-soaked forest. Her boots squelched in the mud and water ran down her face and neck, but James was right. The cabin, when they reached it, was small but sturdy, with a stone fireplace and a roof that did not leak. James quickly got a fire going and warmth began to fill the space. "This is much better," Zara said, shaking water from her hair. "Thank you. The others can stay at the camp. They are tough enough, but you are still recovering and I did not want you catching pneumonia." "I am not made of glass, James. I can handle a little rain." "I know you can, but that does not mean you should have to." He turned away to add more wood to the fire, and Zara studied his profile in the flickering light. Water dripped from his hair, and his wet shirt clung to his broad shoulders. She felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to reach out and touch him, to close the distance between them. "James," she said softly. He turned to look at her, and something in her expression must have given her away because his eyes widened slightly. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the air between them crackling with more than just the fire's heat. "Zara," he said, his voice rough. "I should not be here alone with you. It is not proper." "I do not care about proper," Zara said. "Proper did not save me in the desert. Proper did not ride out to find justice for my father. You did that, James, you. I am just trying to do what is right. And I am trying to tell you that I care about you. I know it is too soon. I know I should still be mourning, but these feelings will not be denied. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel alive in a way I have not felt since before my father died." James crossed the small cabin in 2 strides and cupped her face in his hands. "I have been trying not to feel this," he said, his gray-blue eyes intense. "Trying to tell myself it is wrong, that you are vulnerable, that I am taking advantage. But God help me, Zara, I cannot stop thinking about you. From the moment I found you in that desert, barely breathing, I have not been able to get you out of my mind." "Then stop trying," Zara whispered. "Stop fighting it." James kissed her then, a soft, tentative kiss that quickly deepened into something more passionate. Zara wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing against him, feeling the solid strength of his body against hers. The kiss was everything she had imagined and more, full of longing and promise, and a connection that went beyond words. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "We should take this slow," he said. "I want to do right by you, Zara. I want to court you properly, not rush into something because we are thrown together on this journey." "I understand," Zara said, though part of her wanted to forget propriety entirely. "But James, know this. I am already yours. Whatever happens when we find the Murphy gang, whatever comes after, my heart belongs to you." "And mine belongs to you," James said. "I promise you, when this is over, I will court you the way you deserve. I will ask you properly to be my wife if you will have me." "I will have you," Zara said, smiling through sudden tears. "In a heartbeat, I will have you." They kissed again, gentler this time, a seal on the promise they had made to each other. Then they settled by the fire, Zara tucked against James's side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked quietly through the night, making plans for the future, sharing dreams and hopes. When dawn came, they walked back to the camp together, and though they said nothing to the others, Zara suspected Marshal Dawson guessed what had happened. The older man gave James a long, measuring look, then nodded slightly, as if giving his approval. They reached Republic, Washington, in early July. The town sat in a valley surrounded by mountains, a rough collection of wooden buildings that had sprung up around the gold and silver mines. The main street was thick with mud from recent rains, and the boardwalks were crowded with miners, gamblers, prostitutes, and merchants. It was exactly the kind of place where outlaws could disappear. Marshal Dawson led the posse to the local sheriff's office. The sheriff, a man named Hank Morrow, greeted them with cautious welcome. He was in his 40s with thinning blonde hair and a wary expression. "Marshal Dawson, got your telegram. What brings Arizona law all the way up to Washington territory? The Murphy gang. We have information they might be in the area. One of them took a bullet in the shoulder about a month back, and we heard he sought treatment from a doctor here in Republic." Morrow's expression darkened. "We have got several doctors in town. I can ask around. What is this gang wanted for?" "Murder, robbery, kidnapping. They killed this young lady's father and left her to die in the desert." Morrow looked at Zara with sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss, miss. We will do everything we can to help. Republic is a rough town, but we do not harbor murderers knowingly." Over the next few days, the posse made inquiries throughout Republic. They visited doctors, asking about patients with shoulder wounds. They watched the saloons and gambling halls, looking for familiar faces. Zara studied every man she saw, but none matched the faces burned into her memory. On the fourth day, they got a break. One of the doctors, an elderly man named Samuel Frost, remembered treating a man with a gunshot wound to the shoulder about 3 weeks earlier. The man had given his name as John Smith, but Dr. Frost had been suspicious. He had a snake tattooed on his neck, the doctor told them. And his companions were rough-looking men. They paid in gold coin, which was odd. Most men around here pay in silver or scrip from the mines. I reported it to Sheriff Morrow, but by the time the sheriff went looking, they had cleared out. "Did they say where they were going?" James asked. One of them mentioned something about a cabin up in the mountains, near an old abandoned mine called the Lucky Strike. But that is rough country, and there are dozens of abandoned mines up there. Could take weeks to search them all. "We have time," Marshal Dawson said grimly. "We did not come all this way to give up now." Sheriff Morrow provided them with a local guide, a grizzled old prospector named Harold Jenkins, who knew the mountains better than anyone. Harold was in his 60s, with a long white beard and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "I know the Lucky Strike," Harold said. "Played out 10 years ago. There is an old cabin nearby that the mine owners used to use. If your outlaws are holed up there, it is about a day's ride into the mountains. Rough trail, not safe for horses in places. We will need to go on foot for some of it." They set out the next morning, well armed and provisioned. The trail climbed steeply into the Cascade Mountains, winding through dense pine forests and across rushing streams swollen with snowmelt. The air grew cooler as they climbed, a welcome relief after the heat of the valley. Harold led them with confidence, navigating trails that were barely visible to Zara's eyes. James stayed close to her, helping her over the rough spots, his presence a constant reassurance. The deputies spread out, alert for any sign of trouble. On the afternoon of the second day, they spotted smoke rising from a narrow valley ahead. Harold held up a hand, signaling them to stop. They gathered in a tight group, speaking in whispers. "That has got to be them," Marshal Dawson said. "Pete, Danny, scout ahead and see what we are dealing with." The two deputies moved forward silently, disappearing into the trees. They returned 20 minutes later, their expressions grim. "6 men," Pete reported. "Holed up in a cabin just like Harold said. They have got horses in a corral, supplies stacked up. Looks like they have been there for a while. One of them has his arm in a sling." "That will be Snake Wilson," Zara said, her voice hard. "The one I shot." "Can we surround the cabin?" Dawson asked. "We can try, but they will see us coming. The cabin has a good view of the approaches. They will have time to ford up." Dawson thought for a moment. "Then we need to draw them out. Harold, is there another way down into that valley?" "There is a game trail on the east side, steep and narrow but passable." "Why? If we split up, some of us can approach from the front while others come in from the east. We will call them out, give them a chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will take them by force." "I want to be there when you confront them," Zara said. "I need to see their faces." "Absolutely not," Dawson said. "If shooting starts, you need to be well away from the danger." "Marshal, we had this conversation already. I have a right to be there." James put a hand on her arm. "Zara, please, let us handle this. I could not bear it if something happened to you." Zara looked into his eyes and saw the fear there, the very real terror of losing her. She softened. "I will stay back, but I want to be close enough to see. I need to know for certain it is them." "Fair enough," Dawson said. "Walker, you stay with her. Keep her safe. The rest of you, let us move." They split into 2 groups. Frank, Tom, and Mike went with Harold to approach from the east. Dawson, Pete, and Danny moved toward the front of the cabin. James and Zara found a position on a rocky outcrop that gave them a clear view of the cabin but kept them out of the line of fire. Through James's spyglass, Zara could see the cabin clearly. It was small and weathered, with a sagging porch and a stone chimney from which smoke rose lazily. 6 horses stood in the corral. As she watched, a man emerged from the cabin, stretching and yawning. Even at this distance, Zara recognized him. Rake Murphy, the man who had killed her father. "It is them," she whispered, her hands clenching into fists. "That is Rake Murphy." James nodded and signaled to the marshal. Dawson and his deputies moved into position, taking cover behind trees and rocks about 50 yards from the cabin. Dawson cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, "Rake Murphy, this is Marshal Dawson of Prescott, Arizona. You and your men are surrounded. Come out with your hands up and no one has to get hurt." For a moment, there was no response. Then Rake Murphy appeared on the porch, a rifle in his hands. He was a big man, over 6 feet tall, with a shaggy black beard and cold, dark eyes. "Marshal, you are a long way from Arizona," Rake called back. "What makes you think we are going to surrender?" "Because the alternative is dying in that cabin. We have 8 guns trained on you right now." "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Be smart, Murphy. Throw down your weapons and come out." Rake laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think you can take us? Boys, we have got company." 5 more men poured out of the cabin, all armed. Zara recognized Cole Murphy, Rake's brother, and Snake Wilson with his arm in a sling. The others were the men who had been part of the attack on the stagecoach. "Last chance, Murphy," Dawson shouted. "Surrender now." Rake's answer was to raise his rifle and fire. The shot went wild, but it was all the provocation the posse needed. Gunfire erupted, a thunderous exchange that echoed through the valley. Zara watched, her heart pounding, as the outlaws dove for cover and returned fire. The deputies were well positioned, using the trees and rocks for protection, but the outlaws had the advantage of the cabin's solid walls. The firefight lasted for nearly 20 minutes. Zara saw Danny Sullivan go down, clutching his leg, though he managed to crawl to safety behind a boulder. Pete Whitmore's shot took one of the unnamed outlaws clean through the chest, dropping him where he stood. Snake Wilson tried to make a run for the horses, but took a bullet from Frank Morrison's rifle that put him down for good. Then Rake Murphy made a desperate move. He burst from the cabin, running for the corral and the horses, firing his rifle as he went. Marshal Dawson stepped out to get a clear shot, and Rake's bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard. "No," Zara cried out. James was already moving, rifle in hand, rushing down from their position. Zara followed, though every instinct screamed at her to stay safe. She could not watch from a distance anymore. This fight was personal. Rake had reached the horses and was trying to mount, but his wounded horse reared and threw him. He hit the ground hard, losing his rifle. Zara saw him scramble for the weapon, saw James running toward him. Time seemed to slow. Rake got his hands on the rifle and swung it toward James. Zara raised her own rifle, her father's lessons coming back to her in a rush. Breathe. Aim. Squeeze, do not pull. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, the report deafening in her ears. Rake Murphy jerked backward, Zara's bullet taking him high in the chest. He fell, the rifle tumbling from his hands. James reached him a moment later, kicking the rifle away and standing over the outlaw with his own gun drawn. Zara ran forward, her hands shaking. Rake Murphy lay on the ground, blood spreading across his shirt. He looked up at her with eyes that were already glazing. "You," he rasped, "the girl from the stagecoach. You killed my father," Zara said, her voice breaking. "You left me to die." "Should have made sure," Rake said, then coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Should have put a bullet in you." You are going to hang for what you did, Zara said. You and your whole gang. But Rake Murphy did not answer. His eyes went blank and his body went slack. He was dead. Zara stood there, looking down at the man who had destroyed her life, and she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just a hollow emptiness. James put an arm around her shoulders and gently led her away. "It is over," he said softly. "He can never hurt you again." The battle ended moments later. Cole Murphy and the remaining two outlaws, seeing their leader dead and half their gang killed or wounded, threw down their weapons and surrendered. Frank Morrison and Tom Brennan secured them while Mike Chen tended to Marshall Dawson and Danny Sullivan. Both men's wounds proved to be serious but not life-threatening. That night they made camp near the cabin, the captured outlaws bound and under heavy guard. Marshall Dawson, his shoulder bandaged, sat beside the fire and looked at Zara with respect. "That was a hell of a shot, Miss Kennedy. You saved Walker's life." "He saved mine first," Zara said quietly. "It seemed only fair." Dawson chuckled, then winced at the pain in his shoulder. "Fair enough. When we get back to Prescott, you will need to testify at the trial. Cole Murphy and those other two will hang for murder and robbery." "I will be there," Zara promised. The journey back to Arizona took longer than the trip north, as they had to move slowly with prisoners and wounded men. They returned to Republic, where Sheriff Morrow arranged for doctors to treat Marshall Dawson and Danny Sullivan. The two wounded men would need to rest for a few weeks before making the long journey home. So Dawson arranged for Frank Morrison and Tom Brennan to transport the prisoners back to Prescott with Pete Whitmore. James and Zara volunteered to stay in Republic with Dawson and Danny until they were fit to travel. It was a decision that pleased both of them, as it gave them time together away from the pressures of the posse and the journey. Republic had a small hotel, the Mountain View, that was surprisingly comfortable for a frontier mining town. Zara took a room there, and for the first time in months, she slept in a real bed with clean sheets. She bathed, washing away weeks of trail dust, and put on a new dress that James had bought for her from the town's general store. It was simple calico, nothing fancy, but it fit well and made her feel human again. That evening, James came to call on her, dressed in clean clothes and looking nervous. He held his hat in his hands and asked if she would join him for dinner at the hotel's restaurant. Zara agreed, touched by the formality of the request after weeks of sleeping on the ground and eating beans from a tin plate. The restaurant was small but pleasant, with checked tablecloths and candles on each table. They sat across from each other, and for a few minutes they simply looked at each other, taking in the strangeness of being in civilization again. "You are beautiful," James said finally. "I mean, you have always been beautiful, even covered in trail dust. But seeing you like this in a dress with your hair down, it takes my breath away." Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You look quite handsome yourself. Though I confess, I have grown fond of seeing you in your work clothes and hat. I will wear them every day if it pleases you." They ordered dinner, roast beef and potatoes with fresh bread, and they talked as they ate. The conversation came easily now after weeks on the trail together. They talked about the future, about the ranch, about what Zara wanted to do with her life. "I have been thinking," Zara said, "about your mother's offer for me to stay at the ranch. If it still stands, I would like to accept. I have no family left, nowhere else to go. And truthfully, there is nowhere else I would rather be than with you." James reached across the table and took her hand. "The offer stands, and I am so glad you will accept it. But Zara, I want to make something clear. I am not offering you charity or just a place to stay. I am asking you to build a life with me. I want to marry you if you will have me. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a short time, but what I feel for you is real and true." Will you be my wife?" Tears sprang to Zara's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, James, I will marry you. I love you." "I love you too," James said, "more than I ever thought possible." He came around the table and pulled her to her feet, kissing her there in the restaurant for all to see. The other diners applauded, and Zara laughed through her tears, her heart full to overflowing. They were married 2 weeks later in Republic, as soon as Marshall Dawson was well enough to stand up for James. The ceremony was held in the small church at the edge of town, with the preacher officiating. Zara wore a white dress that had been made for her by the town seamstress, a kind woman named Mrs. Yates who had taken a liking to Zara. James wore his best suit, looking nervous and proud all at once. Marshall Dawson gave Zara away, standing in for the father she had lost. As he walked her down the aisle, he whispered, "Your father would have been proud of you, Miss Kennedy. You are one of the bravest women I have ever known." "Thank you, Marshall," Zara whispered back, "for everything." The ceremony was simple but beautiful. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, James kissed Zara with such tenderness that she felt her heart might burst. They walked out of the church to cheers and well wishes from the townsfolk, who had all grown fond of the couple during their stay. That night, in the hotel room that was now theirs as a married couple, James made love to Zara with patience and gentleness, always mindful of her comfort. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never imagined I could be this happy," Zara said softly. "After everything that happened, after losing my father, I thought I would never feel joy again. But you have given me hope, James. You have given me a reason to look forward instead of back." "You have given me the same," James said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I was so focused on revenge, on catching the men who killed my friend, that I had forgotten what it was like to live for something positive. But then I found you and everything changed. You changed me, Zara." "We changed each other," Zara said, "and we will keep changing, growing together. That is what marriage is, I think, a constant journey of discovery. I look forward to every step of that journey with you." They returned to Arizona in early September, when Marshall Dawson and Danny Sullivan were fully recovered. The journey home was much more pleasant than the trip north had been. They traveled at a leisurely pace, stopping in towns along the way, and James and Zara enjoyed their time as newlyweds. At night, they would find privacy away from the others, and James would hold Zara and talk about all the plans he had for their future together. When they finally reached the Walker Ranch in late September, Martha came running out of the house, tears streaming down her face. She embraced Zara, then James, then Zara again. "A telegram came 2 weeks ago telling me you were married," Martha said, laughing and crying at once. "I could not believe it at first, but then I thought, of course they fell in love. How could they not? Oh, Zara, welcome to the family, my dear. Welcome home." "Thank you, Martha," Zara said, hugging her new mother-in-law. "Thank you for everything." "No need for thanks. You are family now. This is your home as much as it is mine and James's." The trial of Cole Murphy and the 2 surviving gang members took place in Prescott in October. Zara testified, her voice steady and clear as she recounted the events of that terrible day on the road between Tucson and Prescott. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. The 3 men were sentenced to hang, and the sentence was carried out a week later. Zara did not attend the hanging, but James did, standing as a witness to see justice fully served. With the trial behind them, Zara and James settled into their new life together at the ranch. Zara threw herself into learning the work of the ranch, and she proved to be a quick study. She helped Martha with the house and the garden, but she also worked alongside James with the horses. She had a natural affinity for the animals, and James taught her everything he knew about training and breeding. Together, they began to build the horse ranch that James had always dreamed of. In the spring of 1883, Zara discovered she was pregnant. The news filled James with such joy that he picked her up and spun her around, making her laugh and beg him to put her down. Martha was equally thrilled, already planning and preparing for the arrival of her first grandchild. "I hope it is a boy," James said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. His hand rested on Zara's stomach, which was just beginning to show the gentle swell of her pregnancy. "A boy," Zara teased. "And what if it is a girl? Then I will love her just as much." "But I was thinking, if it is a boy, we could name him Samuel, after your father." Zara felt tears prick her eyes. "That would mean the world to me, James. My father would have loved you, you know. He would have been so happy to see us together. I wish I could have known him. From everything you have told me about him, he was a remarkable man." "He was, and our child will know all about him. I will tell our children stories about their grandfather, about his kindness and his courage. They will be proud to carry his name." In November of 1883, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long and difficult, but Martha was there to help. And when Zara finally held her son in her arms, all the pain was forgotten. James came into the room, his eyes wide with wonder, and took his son carefully from Zara's arms. "Hello, Samuel," he whispered to the baby. "Welcome to the world, little man. I am your father, and I promise to always protect you and love you and teach you to be a good man." Little Samuel yawned and waved a tiny fist, and James laughed, a sound of pure, unfiltered joy. Zara watched them, her husband and her son, and felt her heart overflow with love. The years that followed were full and happy. The ranch prospered under James's management and Zara's help. They bred fine horses that were sought after throughout the territory. Zara also started a small school on the ranch, teaching the children of neighboring families to read and write, fulfilling her mother's legacy. In 1885, Zara gave birth to twin daughters, whom they named Grace and Emma. James was a devoted father, patient and kind, teaching his children to ride almost as soon as they could walk. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who idolized his father, and the twins were as different as night and day, Grace quiet and thoughtful, Emma bold and adventurous. In 1887, another son arrived, whom they named Benjamin after James's father. The house was full of laughter and noise, the chaos of children growing and playing and learning. Martha, now a grandmother to 4, was in her element, spoiling her grandchildren and helping Zara manage the busy household. Through it all, James and Zara's love only deepened. They had their disagreements, as all couples do, but they always talked through their problems, always made time for each other. On clear nights, they would sit on the porch like they had on their first night together, looking up at the stars and talking about their dreams. "You ever think about that day I found you?" James asked one such night in the summer of 1889. They had been married for 7 years, and their love had only grown stronger with time. "I think about it often," Zara said. "Sometimes I have nightmares about it, about the heat and the thirst and thinking I was going to die. But then I wake up and you are beside me, and I remember that something good came from that terrible thing. If the Murphy gang had not left me in that desert, you never would have found me. We never would have met. I hate that you had to suffer for us to find each other. I wish I could have saved you from that pain. You did save me, James. In every way that matters, you saved me. You gave me a reason to live when I thought I had lost everything. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You gave me love." James pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "And you gave me all the same, Zara. "You are my heart, my soul, my everything. And you are mine." As the 1890s dawned, the Walker Ranch became one of the most successful horse ranches in Arizona. James's reputation as a horseman spread far and wide, and buyers came from as far as California and Texas to purchase Walker horses. Zara's school grew as well, and she took great pride in the number of children she had taught to read and write over the years. Samuel, now in his teens, showed a natural talent for working with horses and announced his intention to follow in his father's footsteps. The twins, Grace and Emma, were both intelligent and capable young women, Grace with a gift for numbers and bookkeeping, Emma with her mother's love of teaching. Benjamin, the youngest, was still finding his way but showed signs of inheriting his father's easy way with people. In 1895, tragedy struck when Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 70 years old and had lived to see her grandchildren grow into fine young people. Her loss was deeply felt by the entire family, but especially by James, who grieved for the mother who had always been his rock. Zara held him through his grief, just as he had held her through hers, and together they honored Martha's memory by living the kind of life she would have been proud of. As the new century approached, James and Zara found themselves looking back on nearly 20 years of marriage with deep satisfaction. They had built a good life together, raised fine children, created a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. One evening in 1899, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the desert that had brought them together, Zara said, "Do you remember what you told me that night in the cabin during the storm, when we first admitted our feelings for each other?" "I remember every word," James said. "I told you that I wanted to court you properly, that I wanted to do right by you. And you did. You have spent 19 years doing right by me, James Walker. You have been everything I could have hoped for in a husband and more. And you have been my salvation, Zara. That day I found you in the desert, barely breathing, tied to that tree. I had no idea that I was finding my future. I thought I was just saving a life. But you saved mine right back. We saved each other. We did. And I would do it all again. Every hard mile, every moment of danger, just to end up right here with you." Zara leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. The desert stretched before them, beautiful and terrible, the place where their story had begun. In the house behind them, they could hear their children laughing, the sounds of family and home and love. Samuel was helping Grace with her correspondence for a buyer in California. Emma was reading to Benjamin from one of the novels Zara kept in the parlor. The sounds were familiar and comforting, the music of a life well lived. James took Zara's hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For saying yes. For taking a chance on a cowboy with more courage than sense. For building this life with me. Thank you for finding me, for seeing something worth saving, for loving me." "Always," James said. "I will always love you, Zara Walker. And I will always love you, James Walker." They sat together as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. The same stars that had witnessed their first conversation as a married couple. The same stars that had watched over them through years of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. They had weathered every storm together, and they would continue to do so for all the years to come. The ranch thrived into the new century. Samuel took over more and more of the daily operations as James began to slow down, though he remained active and involved well into his 60s. Grace married a banker from Phoenix in 1905 and had 3 children of her own. Emma became a teacher, opening a proper school in Prescott that educated hundreds of children over the years. Benjamin followed his own path, becoming a veterinarian and returning to the ranch to care for the horses and other animals. Zara continued her work educating children until she was well into her 60s, and she never lost her love of books and learning. She and James aged together gracefully, their hair turning silver, their faces gaining lines that spoke of years of laughter and love. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1923, their entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren filled the house with noise and joy. James and Zara stood together, surrounded by the family they had created, and marveled at how far they had come from that day in the desert so many years ago. 40 years, Zara said, shaking her head in wonder. It seems impossible that so much time has passed. And yet it also feels like just yesterday that I found you tied to that Joshua tree, James said. My beautiful, brave Zara, barely breathing but still fighting to survive. I was fighting to survive because somewhere deep down I knew you were coming. I knew someone would find me, and I am so grateful it was you. No more grateful than I am. You are my life, Zara. You always have been. They kissed then in front of their entire family, and their children and grandchildren applauded and cheered. Samuel, now a man of 40 with children of his own, raised a glass of wine. To my parents, he said, his voice full of love and respect. James and Zara Walker, who taught us all what true love looks like. May we all be blessed with a love as strong and enduring as theirs. Hear, hear, the family chorused, raising their glasses. James and Zara lived into their 80s, spending their final years surrounded by family and the land they loved. When James passed away in 1932 at the age of 75, Zara held his hand and whispered that she would see him soon. She followed him 6 months later, dying peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face. They were buried together on a hillside overlooking the ranch, their graves marked by a simple stone that read, James Walker and Zara Walker, beloved husband and wife, together forever. The ranch continued to operate for many years after their deaths, run by Samuel and later by his children. The Walker name became synonymous with quality horses and integrity in business, a legacy that James and Zara would have been proud of. But perhaps their greatest legacy was the love story they left behind, a tale told and retold by their descendants for generations. It was a story of tragedy and rescue, of justice and redemption, of two people who found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built a life together that endured through all challenges. It was a story that began with bandits leaving a young woman tied to a tree in the desert to die, and a cowboy finding her barely breathing. But it did not end there. It continued through years of love and partnership, through raising children and building a legacy, through facing every challenge hand in hand. It was, in the end, a story about the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, to bring light into the darkest places, to transform tragedy into triumph. And it was a story that would never be forgotten, as long as there were walkers to remember the day James found Zara in the desert, and everything that came after. Their great-grandchildren would sit on that same porch where James and Zara had spent so many evenings, looking out at the desert that had brought their ancestors together, and they would tell the story again. They would talk about bravery and love, about justice and family, about building something that lasts. And somewhere, perhaps, James and Zara Walker watched over them all, their love as enduring in death as it had been in life, a testament to the truth that some bonds can never be broken, that some loves truly do last forever. The sun set over the Arizona desert, just as it had on that day in 1882, When James Walker found a young woman named Zara Kennedy barely breathing, tied to a Joshua tree by bandits who thought they had left her to die. But they had been wrong. They had not left her to die. They had left her to be found, to be saved, to find love and build a life that would echo through generations. And in finding her, James had found himself. Together, they had found everything that mattered: love, family, purpose, and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. It was more than either of them could have dreamed of on that blazing day in the desert, but it was exactly what they both deserved. A lifetime of love, built on a foundation of courage and sealed with a promise that neither of them ever broke. Together, always and forever.